headlines.
Taking your ball and going home is not usually a phrase used to describe someone who handles adversity well. Well, there's about a dozen Oregon lawmakers doing just that, walking out on a legislative session when they don't get their way, and it could cost them their seat in the Senate. We have two official candidates for Boise mayor right now, which makes it kind of easy to keep track of what one says about the other. Today, we're taking a look at what was said this week. 1 year ago this week, Idaho was welcoming Ukrainians displaced by war. We check in to see the difference the Welcome Center has made.
They didn't have the wherewithal to stand there and vote for their constituents. Instead, they chose to walk out, and that means that their constituency did not have a vote on that bill whatsoever.
Republican Representative Megan Blanksma calling out her Democratic colleagues back on March 29th when they chose to walk out instead of voting on House Bill 374. That was the bill that was trying to fix the vagueness of Idaho's abortion ban, removing the affirmative defense clause and adding some specific exemptions. It passed, by the way, despite 11 Democratic lawmakers removing themselves from the vote. So why are we talking about that today? Well, you take that same situation, about 10 lawmakers, reverse it, and multiply it by 22 times, and you'll know what is happening right now in the Oregon State Legislature. Across the border, they have a Democratic majority in the legislature. And since May 3rd, 11 senators, 10 Republican and 1 independent, have failed to step onto the Senate floor, which has put that chamber in a standstill because Oregon is one of 4 states that requires 2/3 of lawmakers to be present in chamber in order for any work to be done. And this isn't the first time Oregon Republicans have done this. They did it in 2021, 2020, and 2019. So 3 times in the last 4 years, which is why Oregonians amended their constitution last November to say failure to attend without permission or excuse 10 or more legislative floor sessions shall be deemed disorderly behavior and shall disqualify their member from public office or from holding office as a senator or representative for the term following the election after the member's current term is completed. So we wanted to speak to one of those senators accused of disorderly behavior. Republican Senator Lynn Findley has served District 30 in Oregon, which includes Crook, Grant, Harney, part of Deschutes, Lake, Baker, and Malheur counties since 2020. He told us today this 22-day walkout was sparked by something Senate staffers showed them. He said at the end of April, it was pointed out Oregon lawmakers were not complying with a 1979 law, which required all bill summaries to be written at an 8th grade reading level, 8th or 9th grade reading level. It also carried over into Senate rules, that law, I should say. Even the Constitution of Oregon says acts be plainly worded, avoiding use of technical terms. Good luck with that. But this protest was based on bill summaries, the part of the bill that simplifies it, usually puts it in about 1 or 2 paragraphs to kind of make it easily digestible. And Senator Findley says those have all been written by Legislative Counsel, the same counsel who said if lawmakers pass that bill as it is written, well, then it's automatically compliant with the law. Senator Findley and the others didn't agree. And they all want the bills not already acted on to be brought back to committees and those summaries rewritten. Because if they don't, well, they're not following the law and they aren't serving their citizens. The Senate majority leadership disagreed, so the minority walked out.
I get questions from constituents all the time. What does this bill mean? What the heck are you talking about? And when we write them in, advanced doctoral grade level, people don't understand them. So we believe if we continue doing what we were doing, we were in contradiction to the Oregon Constitution. We're in direct violation of Oregon revised statute, and we're in direct violation of Oregon Senate rules.
Senator Findley says they asked Senate leaders to bring some of the bills back to committee so they could bring their summaries into compliance.
And they refused. So we said, well, my oath of office means a lot to me. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state of Oregon, to uphold the laws of the state of Oregon. And I believe if we act on these measures without them complying with that knowingly, we're in violation of those in Senate rules.
Did this walkout have anything to do with any of the abortion, gender-affirming care bills or gun bills?
There's certainly some measures that do not comply. And we said, send these measures back to a committee and have them fixed. And they refused.
Not because you didn't want to vote on them?
Now, we don't like the bills. Don't get me wrong. For 1 second, I think these are terrible, terrible bills that take away the parental rights of all parents. I would love to have the opportunity to stand and debate these and bring all the shortcomings of those measures out to the public, because if the public really heard all the draconian effects of these measures, they're probably not going to like them too much.
Okay, so what does this walkout accomplish then? I mean, if you want to debate these and point out the fallacies of these bills, you're not doing that with a walkout.
Well, and let's be realistic, unlike Idaho, Oregon has a different dynamics in the legislature. The minority party in Oregon is Republicans, and the Democrats have the votes to do anything they want to do except raise taxes and provide a quorum. So we don't like the bills. One of the tools we have is deniable quorum. I would prefer to have a bill on the floor of debate and put into record and then put the authors of the bill accountable to the voters of Oregon. But it's got to be a legal bill to do it. And if it's not legal, then I can't get there.
Okay, you mentioned Idaho.
This was a charade that was going to fix nothing, and we didn't want to play a role in it, so we left.
And some Republicans pointed out that they're basically thumbing their nose at democracy. They have a job to do. They should be there to do it. Their constituents are not getting good representation. How does that apply to you guys?
It's kind of funny. The Democrats are saying the same thing about us in Oregon.
In a democracy, it is imperative that the minority should not have the ability to overrule and silence the will of the majority.
It's a tool the minority party uses. The best thing to do is to figure out and get along a lot better than we are.
The clerk will please call the roll.
That tool,
Boquist.
senators staying away from the floor to prove a point,
Dembro, Finley,
has now put Senator Finley
Frederick.
and 9 others
Hansel, Hayden,
in a place where they've
Joma.
set their own term limits.
Colleagues, the quorum is not present.
Last November, voters overwhelmingly agreed to hold absences accountable.
They are holding us hostage by this walkout.
So now, any lawmaker who fails to show up for work without permission for 10 days would be disqualified from holding office. You're past that.
I am past that, and I did that. Did I like it? No. But my oath of office means more to me than personal gain. And therefore, I'm willing to sacrifice that so I can look myself in the mirror and say, well, I'm doing everything I can to comply with my oath of office, even if it means that I'm no longer going to be a senator after the next election.
Did you vote for that measure?
I did not.
Well, 59% of your constituents in Malheur County voted for it.
Yeah, it passed in Malheur County, and it passed in the 9 other counties that I support. And I respect the will of the voters. I would guarantee if you ask all those voters, what did it really mean? They probably didn't know.
And that's kind of the basis of this whole walkout, is that there's a lot of things that people don't really understand.
That's exactly right. You loop it back to this whole walkout is we have to be able to speak in plain English. We have to be able to say, so any non-lawyer, which I'm not, can understand what the heck we're talking about.
Do you see this lasting till June 25th?
We're fully prepared to do that. I would hope we wouldn't. I would hope we could come to reach an agreement, get all sides together and have meaningful negotiations and plot a path forward.
Don't show up for 10 days, unexcused, you don't get to run again. That seems pretty simple. But June 25th, by the way, is the designated day for the end of the Oregon legislative session. And Senator Finley said they are prepared to come back that day and pass all the bills required, like the budgets, which has already been funded, by the way, through September 15th. Senator Finley said there might be some light at the end of the tunnel right now because there's getting word the governor has become engaged in getting these lawmakers back to work. As for 2024, Senator Finley says he's not sure whether he'll run for re-election. And that's kind of the confusing part of this new rule. It says they can't hold office for the following term, but it doesn't say they can't run and win that office. So we'll see what happens. Well, the doomsday scenario we've been hearing about for weeks now. What's going to happen with our $31.4 million national debt ceiling? There's a June 1st deadline to do something about it, or we risk defaulting on our debt and sending our country and economy into a financial death spiral. Things like interest rates spiking and Social Security checks stop coming. All this hand-wringing and name-calling and pearl-clutching for nothing, according to Idaho Senator Jim Risch.
I think this is my 14th rodeo as far as the debt ceiling is concerned. So I have a prediction for you. The debt ceiling will be raised, and it will also be a bipartisan vote that does it. So those are two things that I think are givens probably.
which has happened 78 times since 1960, where the debt ceiling has been either raised, extended, or revised. And just 3 times, or already 3 times in the last 6 months. America hasn't defaulted by many definitions, and it doesn't look like we're going to do that again this time. And Senator Risch, well, he's going to have to cut short his time back in Idaho if and when that deal is reached. On Tuesday, retired Boise Police Chief Mike Masterson officially announced his campaign to become the next mayor of Boise. The event was at the iconic Boise Depot, overlooking the city of trees. But there was a part of that campaign kickoff speech that several of you didn't want us to overlook. Bob asked us on Wednesday, will the 208 do any fact-checking about the claims Masterson made about McLean yesterday? Well, Bob, Joe Paris is here to do just that.
Yes, and a few things I want to say up front, Brian. We're going to qualify this entire report because I can't fact-check an opinion, which is heavily featured, as expected, in Masterson's speech. So can't fact-check opinion. There are some things we're going to dive into, and we're just going to touch on the clip, though, that we played here on the 208. The speech was very long. We'd spend the whole half hour fact-checking the whole thing. So first, let's replay the exact same soundbite we aired on Tuesday from Mr. Masterson that prompted your request.
The crisis in our city government is not simply a matter of the wrong priorities. It is a crisis of transparency and trust. We are faced with a mayor who has failed to develop strong working relationships with city, county, and state officials, who has increased her office budget 60% during the last 3 years, who has approved hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditures without council approval, who has hidden her travel records, who has hidden tort claims, who has lost senior personnel at an alarming rate. It is clear this mayor kicks the can on every issue, lacking foresight, skills, and determination to bring about real change.
All right, skipping over the opinion claims of transparency and trust, let's look at his claim of an increasing office budget of 60% over the last 3 years. Long story short, we'll tell you this. The raw numbers check out. So yes, the claim is accurate, but a little bit of nuance we do want to add. The Office of Innovation and Performance in the city of Boise was actually a part of the mayor's office under Mayor Beater, and for a short time under McLean, it was moved out of her office and her budget later added back in. So there is a portion of budget growth, which is kind of a technicality, but there you go. That is correct on the raw numbers. Important to note, though, that the city council, they have to approve that budget, so it's fair to criticize budget growth, but it's not a unilateral decision that the mayor makes on their own. We did try to ask Masterson to clarify these claims, ask for specifics about what he thought, but we were told Tuesday he was not doing interviews at this point. Okay, so how about Mayor McLean approving hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditures without council approval? Again, we're not sure exactly what this is a reference to specifically, but we can only guess. But whatever it is, the mayor essentially has a budget approved for her office, and within that, the mayor has room to make expenditures. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. But I did reach out to the mayor's office on the claim, and they said this, quote, The council determines both the personnel and operating budgets for departments and offices prior to the beginning of a fiscal year. They even did their first budget workshop for 2024 here this week, and they tell me, quote, throughout the year, when spending changes are warranted, council considers interim budget changes. All of those steps happen in public council meetings, and those council meetings are actually streamed on YouTube, and you can go watch them if you want to. Okay, so the next claim is that the mayor hid her travel records. Serious claim. And that's a conversation that has kind of been unique over the last few years here in Boise, and it's also rooted in the history of former Mayor Brent Coles. He was forced out of office for a travel scandal in the 2000s. But calls have been made for city council and the mayor's office to make travel records and expenses more accessible without a full public records request process. So criticism of that is fair, but a real reason behind McLean's specific travel records being kept tight-lipped is linked to a very serious threat to her safety and life. So I want to show you this. This is federal evidence photos of bullets with the mayor's name on it. If you can't read it, it says McLean die. So you can imagine why travel plans are not as specific as some would like. Finally, there's a claim that McLean hid tort claims. It's very general, depends on what you think hiding is or hid, but I'll say this, no, not every tort claim made against the city of Boise is blasted out in a press release for obvious reasons. Should they be? Maybe a conversation for another day. Some, specifically in media, including people in this building, have criticized response times on documents and retractions made by the city and the mayor's office. The city maintains to us today that they have met all legal requirements on record requests. If this is a reference to the Boise police turmoil, plenty to criticize, but again, we didn't get a chance to ask questions to Masterson about torts or what torts he possibly sees as problematic or, in his opinion, being hidden. So finally, Brian, there's a claim that the mayor had lost senior personnel at an alarming rate. And our question, what would you define as senior personnel?
Right.
Well, the Boise police chief, as we've talked about at length here on Channel 7, gone. You may remember the fire chief was dismissed early in the McLean tenure. Kind of a conflict of personalities there. Of course, when the mayor moved into the office, there's a lot of senior personnel from the Beater administration that, comes in and out. I also did reach out to the mayor's office. They say for a variety of reasons, of course, people have come in and out of the mayor's office over the last few years. So in terms of what we can fact check, they say that in their opinion, in the mayor's office opinion, they don't see people leaving at an alarming rate, but they tell us, they're not exactly sure what that's a reference to. I will say there's a lot of claims about housing and homelessness and all that situation that Masterson touched on in his speech. We haven't touched on that here on the 208 yet, but we'll have plenty of time to jump into this as we head into the election.
And the invitation remains open for either of those candidates, should any others put their hat in the ring, to talk to us about it here on the 208, and we would love to do that and chat.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
we're in it for the long haul. We don't know how long this is going to be. We don't know how long the war is going to go on or how long people will be staying in the States.
And we don't know how long the war in Ukraine is going to last either, which is why a nonprofit opened the Ukrainian Welcome Center in Nampa. The goal from the start was to help people leaving that war find their footing here in America. Make no mistake, it's going to continue, and it is looking like it's not really an end in sight. U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency estimates up to 220,000 Russians have died in that war. It's also killed up to 130,000 Ukrainians. And this week, Nampa, the Welcome Center in Nampa, has officially been open a full year. The numbers also show it has been needed. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Time flies when you're busy. At the Nampa Ukrainian Welcome Center, it feels like it was just yesterday. But
it has been a year.
Who's counting? That'd be Tina Polishuk.
Despite the fact that there's so much evil happening a half a world away, there's the flip side. There's a lot of generosity and a lot of goodness here in Idaho.
Since Russia invaded Ukraine 15 months ago, Polishuk has been on the front lines of providing aid to those relocating to Idaho.
We've had more than 500 people served through the Ukrainian Welcome Center, and right now we're welcoming on average 2 to 3 cases a week. So a case could be one individual person or it could be an entire family.
A year ago, it was about closing the gap between needs and government services.
Clothing, shelter, hygiene products, like those basic things you need to survive.
Today, the focus has changed.
The government services that are available to Ukrainians have also sort of caught up. Right now, most of the services that we provide are mostly access to social services.
That means Ukrainians are often able to legally work within 6 weeks of coming to the States, working to be financially independent and working to learn the language. In the walls of the Welcome Center's adult English language class, they tell a story on their own. Ukrainians learning to write out their emotions in a new alphabet, express the desire to rebuild, explain the reality of leaving home. And for some, it wasn't much of a choice at all.
You're forced to accept a Russian citizenship, or they're going to confiscate everything from you and ship you off to Siberia.
So instead, they come to America, packing almost nothing but optimism, meeting Idaho hospitality.
We've had people donate cars. We have had a family recently that we gifted a car to, and they have 5 children, a 6th one on their way, so we were able to get them a small SUV that fits the entire family. There have been a lot of people step up and say, I'm willing to be a co-signer for a home, which, you know, when you live here and you don't have a credit score, you don't have a rental history, that can be challenging.
People are co-signing homes for complete strangers.
Yes, yeah.
A busy year, building better lives.
When my parents came to the United States 35 years ago, there were people and organizations just like ours that did the same thing. And now it's our turn to pay it forward.
The Welcome Center's building is owned by the Boise Rescue Mission. They're allowing the space to be used for this rescue center in partnership with the Idaho Alliance for Ukrainian Refugees and Immigrants. That's another nonprofit. Polishuk says the Ukrainian people she works with here in Idaho are mostly still on humanitarian parole, and that's normally a 1-year program, Brian. When we first started reporting these people coming to America using the term refugee, it's really more of a legal status word.
Okay.
And so that humanitarian parole, it seems to be extended for these people to 2 years now. So the only date she knows for sure right now is until March, that this Welcome Center will stay until March of next year, but a lot of it still, it's ongoing, it's up in the air. There's not a lot of positives, not a lot of end dates.
But the work they've done, I mean, co-signing for somebody they've never met for a home, that's pretty impressive.
Complete strangers. There's a lot of good things that are happening for people that certainly need it.
All right, thanks, Andrew. All right, let's get to your comments here in the final minute on this Thursday like this one. Why is Senator Risch so confident the debt ceiling will be raised? So far, Republicans are refusing to vote to raise the debt ceiling to pay for the tax cuts and spending Congress has passed. Again, as we mentioned, we've been through this many, many times, especially over the last few years. And Senator Risch is confident we're going to come to some sort of conclusion that's not going to send us into a spiral. Funny how we think if we don't raise the debt limit, everything's going to come crashing down. We've continually raised that limit with no regard on how to pay our bills. The system is corrupt, says Josh in Caldwell. Something to take up with Senator Risch. KGW in Portland has a story several weeks ago that proved bills sponsored by Senator Finley are just as out of compliance in terms of readability as the ones he's complaining about. Why did Malheur County voters not hear about this? Pat asked this question. He said that. He admitted that. He's willing to say until he was notified of this at the end of April, he probably put forward some bills that were not written for 8th graders, at least the summaries. But he said he's willing to put his aside as well to kind of come into compliance. Representatives who walk out should be removed from office just as any other employee would walk out. What would happen in any other job setting, asked Larry. That's a good point. We'll see you tomorrow.